Thank you, Rachel. More from you tomorrow. Miatta Fahnbulleh, who's Chief Executive of New Economics Foundation, and Mark Littlewood, Institute of Economic Affairs. I was asked if I was feeling tiggerish. I'm going to bounce that on you, first of all. Do you, after that statement?
I'm not exactly bouncing for joy. It's fair enough for the Chancellor to say there are some pieces of good news, very modest upward revising of growth forecasts, but we're talking about decimal points here, as we've just seen on your report. Growth is going to be about 1.5% for the next few years. That's pretty poor, really, in historical terms, even though it's just been dialed up just a smidgen for 2017 and 2018. It does look like we're going to get real wage growth back in the economy. And he's got a few £billion to play with. You've got to remember, they keep batting back this deficit reduction target. It was going to be done in 2010, then 2015, then 2020. Philip Hammond's loosened the belt even more, but that probably means that on his relaxed targets, he's coming in with about £4 billion more when we look to the budget this autumn than he suspected. Now, he doesn't seem to be willing to use that for tax cuts. But he is going to use, I think, a tranche of it for spending. So there's some good news, but nothing really to punch the air with joy about.
Miatta, he was optimistic in the Commons, the Chancellor. Do you think he's forgotten what the prospects were in March 2016? Because things compared with then are very different, aren't they?
Well, so he was very optimistic and a little bit complacent, I have to say, because in the end, he kept saying we're trying to build an economy that works for people, and the reality is that people don't feel the economy works for them. So we've had a decade of wage stagnation. It looks slightly better, but the OBR seems to be forecasting that wages will be sluggish until 2025. Huge chunks of the economy haven't recovered since the recession. We've got a housing crisis, and we are seeing public services that are on the brink. And, given the urgency of those problems, I kind of wanted to see more from him. I wanted to see action, or at least signalling that the government was taking these problems seriously and that they would act. And all I saw was more of the same, complacency, and a bit of tinkering at the margins.
He said today was a turning point. Do you think it is?
So I think on the public finances, the picture is looking better. The big question for him is, do you use the wiggle room that this has given you in order to try and deal with these big structural problems in the economy? The long-term picture is that actually out there in the real world, the economy does not feel better for people. That's his big problem, and he's got to take that challenge on.
Well, he's talked about the light at the end of the tunnel. He still accepts we're in the tunnel rather than in the light.
But there's
right?
always a risk that, as he said, that's a train coming the other way.
Well, that's exactly what he said to the Shadow Chancellor. Is that the approaching train of Labour spending plans? I mean, John McDonnell's response was that he thought the deficit was too high, but he thought that the solution to this was apparently for the government to spend much more money. We're still adding, even after all of this so-called austerity, about £1,400 to the national debt every second. So we are a long way away from balanced budgets now. So I wasn't really expecting anything big today. This isn't supposed to be a big announcement. This was supposed to be an update. Philip Hammond very wisely has gone back to one budget a year rather than having two, effectively, that George Osborne had. So it's an update. I don't think he's got reasons for boundless joy, but there are some good numbers here that suggest things are going perhaps a little better than we would have expected a few months ago, but not heroically so.
But Miatta, in political terms, that means that come November, come the autumn budget, he may have a little more, or quite a lot more perhaps, to play with, and that's going to be important for him.
It will be absolutely important. And I mean, to your point about it was supposed to be an update, but he did say at the start of this, I'm not going to announce stuff at Spring Statement unless the economic situation is really tough or there are particular conditions that I need to respond to. I would argue that when you look at the world out there are big issues to respond to. So he could have used this opportunity to act, particularly when we know that there are things like the fact that 11 million working families are about to be hit by benefit cuts that he could have chosen to respond to, and he didn't. So November will be absolutely critical. He said we've got a bit of wiggle room. He's signalled that he may be willing to act. We want to see some action.
Well, Miatta, Mark, no bouncing here, but could do better. It's probably...
Could do better.
Could do better.
Thank you both very much.
Thank you very much.